Hello and welcome to the Positions and Practice oral presentation. My name is Philip Hickman, and in this presentation I will discuss my previous photographic practice, my current practice and how I envision my work in the future. In light of this presentation will also draw upon various photographers that have, or I hope will, influence my own work. But before I proceed, I must clarify that this presentation will adopt the autoethnographic methodological approach, which has influenced my own previous and current academic research. Put simply, autoethnography, as argued by Ellis, is an approach to research and writing that seeks to describe and systematically analyse personal experience in order to understand cultural experience. This approach challenges chronological ways of doing research and representing others, and treats research as a political, socially just, and socially conscious act. As a practitioner of photography, my photographic practice is rather unique, and its beginnings are rooted deeply in the Benedictine tradition. I was a monk, and within this context, the photographs I took and will continue to take will be produced through an unusual photographic practice that is now known as contemplative photography. Contemplative photography is not just a tool where a person documents the world, but more precisely one's relationship with it. Through contemplative photography, the world becomes enlightened, while the photograph invites me to look deeply into the rich experience of my ordinary and daily life experiences. Contemplative photography reminds me, as Patinus suggests, that I must surrender myself to the world in a different way. Contemplative photography as such becomes an act of incarnation, where I am invited to experience something new in the world. This is overtly seen in this photograph, where I have placed a crucifix in a condom and called it Christ in a condom. As such, this photograph is a strong certification of my presence in the world. It questions my identity and faith. It provides the distinctive spiritual belief that I am the reference to every photograph. This photograph is not, therefore, merely a thing in itself, but a personal conduit to another place of reference which my identity turns. With this in mind, I became aware that the resourcefulness of the camera and the power of the photograph can dramatically influence my spiritual and personal growth. Moving from the scenic and idyllic nature of contemplative photography, as evidenced in these photographs that spanned the years between 2011 and 2017 of my research degree, my photographic work changed. Moving from photographs that were taken in the local countryside, the University of Winchester as seen with the photograph of the Robin, and Winchester Cathedral as seen through the photograph of medieval architecture and kneelers, I decided to think of a new strategic plan, and soon after started to reflect on how my body and sexual orientation can be used as an effective weapon against the stereotypical nature of how people represent those who identify as a minority in society. As such, the emphasis changed dramatically, but the contemplative practice is still prevalent. As such, I am always reminded of what Jan Phillips argued in her book, God is at Eye Level, Photography as a Healing Art. She argued, when we set out to document something, we are tasked with revealing the essence, the true spirit of it, as we see it and feel it in our bones. For the more truth a photograph contains, the more potential it has to touch the heart. As powerful images have informed us, so might our images awaken others, ignite a passion, lead to an action that will save a life, a forest, a species. During my research degree, I was also introduced to Susan Sontag's book on photography, and particularly her understanding of what a camera is and can be used for. She argued that the camera is sold as a predatory weapon, one that's as automated as possible, ready to spring. And in this implicit way, to photograph is to appropriate the thing photographed. It means putting oneself into a certain relation to the world that feels like knowledge, and therefore like power. This would imply that photography is framed in terms of consumption, acquisition, and power. It is simply where my new approach to photography stems. Photography simply becomes, as Sontag would argue, a social right, a defense against anxiety, and a tool of power. From this perspective, I started to reflect on my own body as a photographic object, which would ultimately become the fulcrum upon which my future research is to be dedicated. Within this context, I began to become aware that autoethnography, like those photographs I wanted to start taking, is similar to what Richardson argued. Writing is a way of knowing, a method of inquiry, and according to Kissinger, a therapeutic act where we can make sense of ourselves and experiences, or as Atkinson would argue, purge our burdens. However, contemplation within the context of my photographic practice has not been lost. All these photographs invite me, as a viewer, to ask the evolving and cosmological world to be still, to reveal its meanings from the depths of an environment that is based upon my assumptions and ecological desires of individual acceptance. Put simply, my future hope is that the photographic practice I have adopted will develop along the lines that the heart and mind can become together on the same axis. So what is my current but also future photographic aspirations? It is to place my body, sexuality and individuality squarely in the centre of a debate that questions how we perceive ourselves and our bodies within the context of a stereotypical look, muscular, defined, broad-shouldered, for example. Through the photographs I am prepared to take of myself, these three being an example, I am potentially making my body as a social model where I disclose with some starkness something of my own disability and sexuality. In this way, I am following in the steps of photographers like Nan Golding, Robert Mapplethorpe, Diane Arbus, Chuck Close and John Copeland, whose photographs, and particularly those that are seen in this presentation, which have individually influenced my thinking, have helped me question the passivity of fundamental attitudes about the body and values that are current in society. By this, I am emphasizing I am working on behalf of others who are oppressed. Like these photographers, I am helping others to learn something of my struggles, anguishes, and future hopes. What these influential photographs do for my own photographic practice is to place the human body central to the photograph. They simply portray the human body in its rawness. They remind me that the physical dimensions of the body and one's sexuality is only one thread in the body's fabric. In the end, my hope is to merge contemplative photography and this new photographic practice together, so that I will be able to help others question their own personal assumptions about the body image, about gaining some new insight in who they really are, or as Ewan argues, one's generalized humanness, which he continues to argue is not the same as self-absorbent. Even a photographer, according to Samaras, is constantly groping for further meaning and ever more profound revelation. Therefore, through my work as a photographer, my hope is to make the task of photography as a means to make it more aware to us how we can be compelling attributes to creation, to reach the highest stage of awareness, and through contemplation we may come to understand ourself in the wider world.